All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're jumping straight into Chapter 4 of the book, A Walk in the Spirit World. We are unpacking the author's out-of-body visions that detail the latest affairs of the spiritual realm. And honestly, if you think the afterlife is just people sitting on clouds playing harps, you might want to buckle up because this perspective is going to completely flip that idea on its head.
So let's just dive right in with a question that immediately challenges everything we usually assume about life after death. Are there cars and airplanes in the afterlife? Well, according to the spiritual travels detailed in this book, the answer is a massive, resounding yes.
Think of this explainer as our travel itinerary. We're hitting 5 distinct spots today. First, the evolving afterlife. Second, the building of new spirit temples. Third, the goddesses of beauty and fashion. Fourth, a journey to the Indian spirit world. And finally, the overarching concept of religious innovation.
All right, first stop, Section 1, the evolving afterlife, a dynamic dimension.
The core idea here presents a really stark contrast to our normal assumptions. We typically hold this traditional view of the afterlife as these ancient, completely static realms that never change. But the book presents a totally modernized landscape. The author argues that a static afterlife would actually just bore modern humans. When huge numbers of people who are completely used to modern conveniences, when they cross over, their collective consciousness actually drags those earthly concepts right into the spirit world. It literally updates the landscape to reflect our current reality.
The text is incredibly specific about this too. It says, since the 20th century, there are cars running and airplanes flying in the spirit world. The author explains that because so many people spent their earthly lives working in the automotive and aviation industries, they bring those passions and skills with them. They're actually recreating these technologies on the other side, actively transforming the spiritual terrain to match their modern expectations.
Which brings us to stop number 2, Section 2, Building New Spirit Temples, Construction in the Fifth Dimension.
The author shares a really fascinating personal anecdote here. Apparently, a recently deceased relative, a former Diet member and honorary advisor, paid a quiet spiritual visit to the author shortly after passing away. And this unexpected visit actually prompted the author to take an out-of-body journey right in the middle of the night just to see exactly what this man was working on now in the afterlife.
And what he found was, essentially, a massive spiritual construction site. Up in the fifth dimension, the author witnessed new spiritual temples, specifically Happy Science Shuja, actively being built on these gentle, grassy hills. The text describes seeing 2 large buildings standing side by side, still under construction, basically getting prepped to receive and guide modern believers the moment they cross over.
Moving along to stop number 3, Section 3, Goddesses of Beauty and Fashion, Heavenly Inspiration for Earthly Trends.
Continuing this out-of-body walk, the author describes wandering into this breathtaking, glowing mountain made entirely of crystal. And it's not just some static, shiny rock. The entire crystal mountain is constantly shifting and sparkling in all these different colors. The author discovers that this radiant, shifting terrain is actually the domain for the goddesses of beauty.
Here, the author actually meets 4 of these goddesses, including the Greek goddess Aphrodite. But here's the catch. They aren't wearing what you'd expect. Instead of traditional heavenly robes or, classical garments, they are wearing highly modern, dynamic outfits. The author actually compares the look to the Paris collection. And as these goddesses spin and dance around, their dresses instantly change color, going from yellow to blue to pink to purple.
Now, these dances aren't just for show. They build into this absolutely fascinating pipeline of earthly inspiration. According to the text, the goddesses are literally emitting thought waves while they dance, conceptualizing the very essence of what will be considered beautiful this year. And then, earthly fashion designers subconsciously receive these inspirations, leading them to design the exact styles that eventually hit the runways and luxury boutiques down here on Earth.
And that connection is surprisingly literal. The author claims to have seen physical exits, like actual portals, leading straight from this crystal dancing ground down into the high-end luxury stores of our earthly world. We're talking about places like Chanel or Hermès boutiques located inside super high-end earthly hotels. It's like the spiritual realm of beauty has this direct, energetic pipeline to the places where earthly luxury is sold.
All right, our 4th stop, Section 4, Journey to Indian Spirit World, Visiting Mount Sumeru. To show off the incredible diversity of the afterlife, the author then details this high-speed astral flight. He says he was moving so incredibly fast he could actually hear a roaring sound, all to visit Mount Sumeru, which is described as the grand ancient domain of the Indian sun gods.
This part really highlights that alongside all the modernized, continuously updating realms, there are still these vast, historically rich spiritual hierarchies that preserve different earthly cultures and ancient belief systems.
Finally, our last stop, Section 5, Innovation of Religion, Updating Ancient Paradigms.
The crucial takeaway here is that all of this serves a grand mission, which the author calls religious innovation. The argument is that ancient, accumulated spiritual paradigms can get pretty rigid over the centuries. So, if religion is going to actually serve people living today, it has to update its structures to match modern lifestyles. That means actively breaking down those outdated afterlife concepts, updating the paradigms, and cultivating entirely new spiritual domains that actually resonate with current believers.
The author captures the whole concept in one really powerful statement. This world and the afterlife are changing in simultaneous progression. They are deeply interconnected. As we build new societies, invent new technologies, and form new belief systems right here on Earth, the spiritual realm expands and shifts to mirror that exact progress.
So, to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought directly inspired by the author's visions. If the afterlife truly mirrors earthly progress, and if our collective consciousness is literally building the next world, well, what kind of worlds are we currently building for ourselves on the other side? How might your modern daily life, your interests, or even your fashion choices be quietly shaping the afterlife right this very second? It's a lot to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.